you can get stuck in those trauma feedback loops of flight, fight, and then shutting down. The nervous system is stuck there. Even when there is enough safety, your body's still responding as if it's under threat. And it's not. It's actually safe enough now. I'm not in that relationship anymore. I got a really great guy, and, but I don't feel anything. Well, sure, of course you don't, because you're still scared inside, right? We've got to work with that unconscious part of the body that is stuck in that trauma feedback loop through no fault of your own. And so the good news is we have ways of doing that. Breath work, movement, social engagement, focusing, coming inside, tapping into what's happening and how to be with the fear of letting go and talking to that part of yourself that's afraid still. Bodies talk to us and they have a lot to say. We just don't listen.
Jan, MSW, Masters of Social Work, PIFOT, meaning Polyvagal Informed Focusing Orientated Therapist, is an internationally respected author, teacher, and seasoned trauma and addiction psychotherapist. Jan is an educational partner and course developer with the Polyvagal Institute, a lecturer at the University of Toronto, a certifying coordinator with the International Focusing Institute, and Jan also co-directs the Bolden Street Clinic. Her book, Treating Trauma and Addiction with a Felt Sense Polyvagal Method, has already transformed how clinicians around the world understand addiction and trauma. And her new book, 20 Embodied Practices for Healing Trauma and Addiction, takes this life-saving work even further. So, Jen, wow. I'm humbled. I will do my best. Thank you so much for being with us. It's lovely to have you here, and I'm sure your beautiful heart and warmth is going to come across in this interview and help so many people.
I hope so, yeah.
So let's kick it off. So many fields of self-help, psychology, spirituality would say that our experience of life is all in our heads. It's just our thinking, it's just our perception. What would you say to that?
Well, it's a great place to start because it really exemplifies the top-down, westernized model, right, of experience. That cognition and the brain is really the source of everything, and that if we just target our thoughts, we'll be able to transform our lives. And sometimes that's true. In the polyvagal model, we really use a bottom-up, top-down approach. So there are times where you can think something that helps you to be able to embody a shift in autonomic states to change the way you experience the world. But you have to be connected to your body in order to be able to do that. And so many of us have lost. It's, I think, the greatest tragedy, really, because so many of us have lost this connection to the body. And that's when we can do really harmful things to the world, when we don't feel our own kind of animalistic reality, that we are all connected to each other and to the trees and the land and the water and the lakes and each other. No matter what color our skin is or where we were born or what language we speak. And we've really lost that by moving up into a kind of idealization of thoughts and emotional cleansing, almost, like how emotions get in the way. And emotions are wired into our body as a way of helping us to survive by feeling danger, for example, right? We don't just think danger, right? I mean, you say to somebody who's up here and thinks it all centers here, what happens for you when you hear a loud noise? Your body jumps, it mobilizes, right, into flight fight. That's part of the autonomic nervous system. And at that point, we are reduced to whatever it takes to survive. And it's not so much our thoughts. It's helping us to get out of there. So,
Beautiful. Love that. And you actually did it. What happens to us when we hear a loud noise? You
yeah,
physically moved. There was a physicality. There was movement there before thought. And if
yeah.
it happened after thought, we would not survive as a human species.
Well, it's unconscious, right? It comes
Yeah.
through the brainstem, danger, right? This
Yeah.
Steve Porges, he invented a word
Yes.
because he had to,
Hmm.
because there weren't any words that described this amazing process in the body that he called neuroception,
Beautiful.
which is this unconscious way that we track how safe we feel.
Hmm.
And that's the center of everything, is how
Yeah.
safe we feel.
Yeah. I think that word is neuroception is very disarming. I love the way he describes that he needed to find a word that doesn't have an intentionality around it. That
Mhm.
when we have this automatic response below conscious awareness, we're not intentionally pushing somebody away. We're not intentionally, behaving in a way. It's a self-protection again that arises from the bottom. And I love that. And that's
Yeah.
really helped a lot of people disarm.
Yeah. Yes, because it really gets to the power of understanding the nervous system, right? That he also calls it, he talks about biological rudeness.
No.
When people do something that we feel biologically, it's offensive. It's like if I was to look away and say, I'm talking to you like this, like, what? What? Where did she go?
Mhm.
Right? And so that happens on a very physiological level, and
Mm,
that impacts how we experience the world. So
mm.
if we can understand those things, we can use some top-down processes to say to ourselves, oh, it wasn't that Sally didn't see me on the street. It was that she wasn't wearing her glasses. So
Right,
she just didn't know I was there.
right,
And that's why she didn't say hello.
right.
But
That's
at the time, we would have a physiological response that would feel unsafe. My friend didn't say hello to me.
right.
And then we would go into thoughts. Well, she doesn't like me anymore. I shouldn't have said that thing to her, blah, 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 blah. The story then follows the state that the person is in, right? So
Yes.
we can use our thinking brain to rewire that. And that's how we work, right? The body, we have a brain and we have a mind and we love all that. It's not that we're against it, but it's not the center of everything.
Right. And what you said was key. So with
Yeah.
awareness, bottom up, and then with the awareness, top down. There's
Yeah.
the understanding that Sally maybe, you said Sally, said
Yeah.
I use that word a lot too, or that name a lot too, Sally. That Sally may be having some sort of physiological response or something's going on inside of her. Her behavior doesn't mean it's about me.
Right.
Her behavior is expressing what's going on internally from her. And we can support Sally.
Yeah, because then we don't take it personally.
Right.
And
Right.
that is so key to understanding the basic root of how we function is in terms of how safe we feel.
Mm.
It
Um,
affects everything, right?
could you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about why safety is important around that?
Well, safety really determines what autonomic state we're in, right?
Mm.
And the autonomic nervous system is kind of like the basis of survival. It's the most important factor in how we're experiencing the world. I mean, think about that. As feminist therapists, 40 years ago, we talked about safety. We knew about this. We knew the importance of it, and we knew the importance of working in the body. But we were a rare species back then. It's changed. The trauma world has changed a lot since then. And we're now becoming more aware of how the body takes precedence in terms of how safe we feel. That's the first thing, because it's all about whether we stay alive or not. So it starts there. And because we have cut off the body, we don't bring that in as the grounding principle of how we understand human behavior. But it is the grounding principle. And so what Steve Porges did is he helped us to understand the potency, the power of the autonomic nervous system as that vehicle for monitoring our safety. And he's given us a way of really understanding the impact then of behavior. So he talks about the intervening variable. Has he talked to you about that? So at first I'm like, what is the intervening variable in this situation? What is it? So it's so clear though, right? This is what he's saying is that, you know, the autonomic nervous system is what is intervening between the stimulus and the response. So the stimulus response model is the traditional kind of behavioral psychology model that most people are trained in around the world these days, right? But that's one model, and it's a model that's come from Western culture, and it doesn't reflect, say, indigenous cultures at all, right? It's just one model, but we act like it's reality and that our brains are little computers. So we have to help people to step out of that and find their way back into the primacy, really, of the body and the need for safety. And I think now more than ever, with what's happening in the world, people, they know flight, fight in their body. And so for me, that's the way when I'm teaching, that's the way I start to help people get into somatics and into the nervous system is to talk about flight, fight.
Right.
Because they know that place. And when you jump at a loud noise, or Trump says, we're going to take over our country, I'm Canadian, we feel threatened.
Yeah.
And so when you can find a place where people feel the intensity of that survival response, that's an avenue in. That's a doorway into saying, do you really think you can start thinking about the best plan of action when, you hear a gunshot? You don't think. The brainstem just gets you out of there. It's a matter of like, do I flee? Can I get out of here? Or can I fight back? Right? And people know that place. So you have to appeal to their body and to an experience that where the body takes precedence to help people to find their way back inside. Or with grief is another place, where often people will be talking away about the primacy of the head in some way or another. If I can just change this and do this and blah, 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 make a list and blah, blah, blah. And then you see that something starts to get tight in their throat, or they start to blush, or a little tear starts to come, even though they might not even be aware of it because they've shut down in their bodies. And if you have some trust and some relationship and some respect together, you can gently start to point those things out. Bodies talk to us. And they have a lot to say. We just don't listen. So we have to become really skilled at finding ways to help people to find those openings, those doorways, those avenues into their felt experience in a way that they feel safe enough that they can acknowledge it. Because if you point it out and they don't feel safe enough, they will retreat, right? Into more defensiveness and more defending the computerized brain kind of idea, right?
Right.
So it takes a lot of skill to help people to kind of slow down a little bit. Because you got to slow down to be in the body.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But they have to feel safe enough with you to come there. And that's hard when you're living in what we call a trauma feedback loop in the nervous system.
So, Jen, we've had a few questions. A lot of them around body pains.
Yes.
So a lot of people are
Like
experiencing,
chronic pain, you mean?
yeah, just like
Yeah.
weird pains moving all over their bodies, and they've, seen the doctor and there's nothing physiologically wrong with it.
Yes, yeah.
So could you talk a bit about bodily pains? Like why are they arising and how can we help heal those?
So this kind of brings us into more of the work that I did with Eugene Gendlin and focusing. So my felt sense polyvagal model is an integration of working with the nervous system with Steve Porges' work, and so neuroception, but also working with interoception. So interoception being the sensing, the capacity to sense into our bodies all of what is going on, the information that our bodies are giving us, including pain and including neuroception, right? Like what the senses are picking up. But interoception is that capacity to come down inside and to sense into body wisdom. And so Eugene Gendlin, my teacher, was really a father of somatics. And he studied that. He was really curious about what produces change, what helps people to heal from chronic pain, for example. And he studied people that were in psychotherapy who reported really positive outcomes. They were able to make a lot of change and feel a lot better. And what he discovered, surprise, surprise, was that they were connected to their bodies and they were listening to the process in which the body is able to move through experiencing and to heal. And so he developed kind of 6 steps to help you to get down into the body and work through or sense into what's happening inside and to read those signals and to follow them and basically to allow yourself to feel all of what it feels like, whatever's going on in there, which of course, because we live in this top-down world, we don't do. So what he discovered was, oh, gee, if we stay with someone together with a deep feeling, like the struggle around chronic pain as a deep feeling in the body. And you've been to all the doctors and they all say you're making it up. And yet you've got this shoulder that's frozen or this gut that's, causing a lot of distress and discomfort. And to really stay there and to be curious about it and to learn how to actually not fall into it, but to be beside it. Now that's tricky, right? But these are the kinds of skills that we can teach people. And when we do that, bodies often release, and there's what we call a felt shift. It's like, it sounds crazy, but what happens in the body is that there's a sense of integration. I am listening to me. I am listening to this pain inside. And often the pain is real and it's also kind of metaphorical. Or it's like a muscle memory. Now, if you were sexually abused, so many of the women that I worked with and men would have like chronic pain in the pelvis, right? What's that all about? So being able to stay with that with a partner. So we focus in partnerships, which is amazing. It's like co-regulation or with a therapist and really listen to what's going on in there without thinking. Now you can come back up and think about it after, and we welcome that. We're not against thinking. I mean, I wrote 2 books. I love thinking. And so does Steve Porges. And so did Eugene Gendlin. He wrote tons of books too. But it's that capacity to then come back down inside. And when you can do that as a listener, then the person that you're listening to who's afraid of that pain can start to come with you because they feel your presence. They feel the magic of your presence. And they feel that they can welcome whatever discomfort is there. And that's a gift because that's the opposite of what we do in a top-down model, right? Discomfort, get rid of it. Block it, numb it, dissociate it out. But in an embodied model, we actually learn to welcome the discomfort as a sign from the body that it needs attention.
it seems to me like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that a lot of the mainstream paradigm around spirituality, psychology, self-help is the top down, and get rid
Mhm.
of it, dissociate it, it's not me, etc., etc. So, as far as just take the psychological field, is this embodied approach? Is this bottom up approach? Is this starting to make headway mainstream? Like, has there been developments to try and bring this and make it more mainstream for psychological health, growth, and restoration? Or is it still a little bit sort of abstract to people at the moment?
Well, I've been doing this work for 45 years now. And back in the beginning, it was very on the fringe. But now, the really hopeful thing is that is becoming more acceptable, although there's a backlash, particularly in the field of psychology, to kind of squash it. But it's not going to be squashed. I mean, there are too many amazing thinkers, and it works. That's the thing, is that it works. And so more and more people are finding us that are teaching somatics. And, you have like brilliant people like, Bessel van der Kolk, who's written these wonderful books, and Janina Fisher's work, which is so wonderful. And of course, Judith Herman, who for me is like the amazing Judith Herman, who knew all about this years and years and years ago. She talked about the nervous system in her first book, Trauma and Recovery. But we missed it because, we didn't recognize the nervous system. But she knew about it because she trained as a medical doctor. So she knew that when we get into start talking about addiction, for example, that jolts to the body shift autonomic states. She knew that. She wrote that in her book in early 90s, I guess it came out, right? So it is definitely having a huge impact. And so those of us now, I mean, it's so exciting to be doing somatic work now because we're actually getting some traction. And I think that, Steve's work has really helped that because, uh, you know, you might disagree with some of it, but you can't knock the fact that he's an incredible scholar. And we've got now some really potent research on neurophysiology and the autonomic nervous system, which acts as a kind of, a little bit more of a top-down way of appealing to that group of folks. And when you start talking about neuroscience, they can't say it's completely woo-woo. They might not agree with it, but it's given us another level of analysis that is really helping, I think, a lot to add to the field of somatics. So more and more and more it's coming into the mainstream, but not without a fight. Not without a fight. Like for example, during COVID, all of the programs that were funded by the Canadian government to help people psychologically were CBT, cognitive behavior therapy programs. Even though it's like, just so frustrating. Because they're trying to like change these thoughts when the nervous system is in a state of threat. It doesn't work like that, right? So, but yeah, I think in answer to your question, that part does make me feel hopeful.
This kind of goes along the lines of one of the other questions, like, well, okay, I get that you can say you had some kind of trauma when you were 5 years old. I get that you can think about the trauma. And so when you think about it, your mind gets sped up and then you can feel it in your body. So from the polyvagal or from the bottom up approach, like how does trauma get trapped in the body? Like, how does that work?
So that's part of what we call this trauma feedback loop. So what happens is if the environment is safe and there's a bad thing that happens to you, right? You are in a car accident or something like that. Your body will shift up into flight fight if it can resolve. If you can get out of there and get the right help that you need, for example, or you're abused and somebody recognizes the abuse and helps you, then you have a chance of not getting locked into that and your body can eventually come back down into a safe enough state what that we call that branch of the ventral vagus that runs from the diaphragm up into the face, right? Then we can calm back down. We've been validated. We know that it was a bad thing. We got the help we needed. But if that doesn't happen, as so often it doesn't, then if we can't fight back and we can't get out of there, the body shifts states into what Steve Porges has named as the dorsal branch of that vagus nerve. And that's the branch of that nerve that shuts us down into dissociation and numbing. And that is an adaptive feature of a nervous system that's under threat. So it's a real paradigm shift in this whole way of understanding trauma. And so then what can happen is if you don't get enough of what you need to come back to safety, the body gets locked in these two states of sympathetic flight fight and then dorsal shutting down. And that forms what we call a trauma feedback loop that goes back and forth. And in polyvagal language, addictions then function as state regulation strategies that help the body to shift back and forth. Like you're in an anxious place, you drink a bottle of wine, you shut down into dorsal. It's very effective, right? And lots of behavioral addictions that are very effective ways of activating the dorsal vagus. It also works the other way. So you're in a numb state. You can't stay in either of those states forever. That's a really important thing to understand. You would die if you stayed in sympathetic or dorsal for too long. In sympathetic, it's too metabolically taxing because your heart rate's elevated, right? You might be sweating, you're anxious. You can't live like that. It's too taxing. You could die. So the body's wisdom unconsciously, instinctually takes us into shutting down. Too taxing, no safety, shut down and hibernate. But you can't stay in hibernation forever either because the heart rate slows down to conserve, right? And so then the body instinctually seeks out behaviors that will activate flight fight. For example, these are hard ones. Cutting the body. Cutting the body can work both ways. So for some people, when they cut the body and they see blood, it scares them, which shifts you back up into flight fight, which keeps you alive when there isn't enough safety. Same with if you're in sympathetic and you cut the body, it releases endogenous opioids. Opioids. No wonder people get addicted to opioids. That shifts you into a dorsal state of relief. Isn't that incredible? It's so interesting. When I learned that, I thought, okay, there's a lot. This is a whole paradigm shift because it's speaking to the adaptive features of a nervous system, right? Of how bodies survive. We look at those in pathological ways from a top-down perspective. What is somebody doing that for? Are they trying to get attention? They're manipulating because they don't understand how it works in the body. Yeah.
That is fascinating.
It is.
It's fascinating.
And then what happens is when we bring in neuroplasticity, so that's a whole other kind of school, right, of learning. So neuroplasticity is, this all happened during the decade of the brain. The 1990s, understanding how the brain works. We've really changed the way we understood that to see that the brain is producing new brain cells all the time. And that's great, except if you travel down that pathway from flight fight into shutting down, back and forth through drinking, porn, watching a lot of porn, shopping, all of the things that can activate numbing and flooding, right?
Mm-hmm.
They become behavioral addictions. They work the same way in the brain. It's like if you walk down the same path over and over and over again, it becomes a rut.
Right.
And that's what we call the plastic paradox. So
Mm.
we're not designed to keep walking down the same path over and over again.
Right.
Unless we're in so much threat, it's the only option we have, and then it's an adaptive feature.
Right.
So that's how addictions occur. It's a learning model that we use. Mark Lewis's work, The Biology of Desire, I wrote about it in my book. And that's what I brought into the felt sense polyvagal model to help us to understand, well, if it's not a brain disease, what is it, right? Oh, yeah, okay. It's like overlearning something.
Yeah.
And the wonderful thing is that when we can teach people these ways of being able to rewire the brain, then you can move out of that trauma feedback loop. You're not stuck there anymore. And it's really freeing yourself from addiction is not white knuckling it.
Mm-hmm.
It's living a safe enough life.
Mm.
Now, it's also true we have to talk about triggers because the body is smart, but it's not always the most discerning,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can get stuck in those trauma feedback loops of flight, fight, and then shutting down, even when there is enough safety. Yeah, so often people will come to us in therapy, right? And they've actually created enough of a safe world around them in their little world to be able to move out of that trauma feedback loop. But the body's stuck in this rut. The nervous system is stuck there. And so our job is to, in some ways, to use top-down processing to do a lot of psychoeducation to teach people your body's still responding as if it's under threat. And it's not. Because we've worked on that, right? And you get that it's actually safe enough now. Yeah, it is. I'm not in that relationship anymore. I got a really great guy and, but I don't feel anything. Well, sure, of course you don't, because you're still scared inside, right? We've got to work with that unconscious part of the body that is stuck in that trauma feedback loop through no fault of your own. It's neuroplasticity. It's the plastic paradox. And so the good news is we have ways of doing that, of moving out of that through lots of different things, right? Breath work, movement, social engagement, focusing, coming inside, tapping into what's happening and how to be with the fear of letting go and talking to that part of yourself that's afraid still, right? Yeah.
That is, I love that. So with my own experience, I've had people that have I've experienced loss, but via car accidents. So my daughter was in a fatal car accident, and my ex-fiance, my past fiance, was in a fatal car accident. Two different car accidents. But when Rudi goes to this amazing massage therapist is on the other side of the island, and it's a very long drive, curvy. We live on an island, so there's lots of ravines. We live on the Hamakua coast, and so there's lots of
Gulches.
gulches. So one time, and phone signal is quite difficult, and so I found myself creating a story already. So my body responded to him not answering my call, to him being gone longer than I deemed that he should have been. And then I was, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I actually pictured myself in the hospital sitting next to Rudi. And then once that happened, the first couple times, then just being aware and noticing that I know exactly what's happening. My body is asking for safety. And so this is where that top down, I can nurture, reassure, and comfort with breath work, with a felt sense of presence. I call it present. What do I call that? Presence.
Loving presence.
Loving presence. Yeah, with the loving awareness, but right here, right now, and walk myself through it. It's not fun. It's not fun. And it actually caused, a little bit of relationship. Like, why were you gone for so long?
Why are you being so controlling?
Your body went to fight.
Yes.
Anger because you were so afraid. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so what you're describing is exactly what we the power of what we can do, of how we can
Absolutely.
apply polyvagal theory and focusing
Yes.
to be able to say to ourselves from a top-down place,
Hmm.
okay, so I need to, rewire because I'm in that triggered state now where it's happening. It's what we
Right.
used to call fresh frozen.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's frozen, numb, but when it gets activated, it's fresh as if it was happening yesterday or today,
Yes.
in the moment, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're able to then tell ourselves and talk to ourselves and
Mhm.
build these new pathways.
Absolutely.
Each time you go around that, you develop more of a sense of ventral presence.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, Jen, to be really transparent, like I studied, as I'm sure other people who may be watching, so many things. I mean, 40 different modalities and techniques and meditations and spirituality and I got to the ripe old age of like, when did we meet? Like I was about 49 maybe.
47.
And having already spoken all over the world and being, a successful spirituality resilience speaker, I had no idea about what you're talking about. I had no idea until I met Jules, and I realized I was living in that loop you were talking about. I was in this, I
Mm.
had a lot happen when I was younger, which I won't go on about now, but I was either I could get angry really quickly and get really anxious, and I feel totally exhausted. And then
Yeah.
something happened, and I'll be like this, and then I'll feel
Yes. Yeah.
exhausted.
That's the trauma feedback loop. Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't know until I started, and Jules introduced me to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
I
It's
saw that.
incredible.
Oh, right.
It's fascinating because I saw that in him, and I need to say something because I was like, oh, I called it a platform of perspective before I met Stephen because it was just like what happened. It was a platform that created unique perspective. There was something arising. Anyway, I called it a platform of perspective, but and I saw that in him, and I have to say that he was humble enough and beautiful enough to let me work with him, to let me, and that speaks
Mm.
volumes to my Prince Charming here.
Oh,
So,
oh,
But
I'm.
you know what we're seeing right now? Let's tell our viewers. This is like a beautiful co-regulation between the two of you.
mm,
Systems where you helped Rudi to feel safe in his body.
mm, yeah,
And this is the next book I'm writing. It's the Felt Sense
Mm.
Polyvagal Dialogue, where we work with couples in creating this kind of safety in the body. And
nice.
then it's just so magical, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's
there's another thing I want to add about the model really is bringing together this idea of a shift. So I studied with Jenlin for over 30 years, and we talk a lot in the focusing community, focusing.org, if people are curious, about the felt shift. And this felt shift is what happens when, say, for example, with Rudi, when he got the message from you that you were giving off safety and a way of helping. So Rudi, she was able to help you to feel safer in your body. We call that a felt shift. It's like the body shifts from constriction of sympathetic into coming into ventral, or it's a shift from dorsal into mobilizing in sympathetic and then coming into a relaxed state in ventral. So we never talked about the nervous system with Jandlin, although he did actually do 3 studies when I was writing my first book. I found these 3 studies that he did with Carl Rogers of the autonomic nervous system. He was a student of Rogers. And so he saw it too, because you can see it in bodies, right? You can see when bodies are tight and you can see when they're in dorsal. And you can see really clearly when we're socially engaged in ventral, like we all are right now. We're having a good time, right? Yeah. So, and lots of blended states as well with that. Like we're in what we would call in my work, fun kind of fired up state. And that's a blending of ventral and sympathetic. And so what I realized when I found Steve's work is, oh, that felt shift we talk about, that you feel when you feel, oh, I feel better now, is a shift in autonomic state. And that's really the model. That's what I brought together. And when I was lucky enough to meet Steve Porges, and I asked him, I said, I think this felt shift thing, I explained to him about focusing. And I think that's a shift in states into ventral. And he's like, yes, absolutely. And so then addictions are, and he said, I was explaining what I thought about addiction. I'm like, addictions don't happen in ventral because you don't need them. It's like, yeah. He says, I've always thought of addictions as state regulation strategies because you're trying to manage flight, fight, and then shutting down, right? And so when he said that, it just brought it all together. And literally that was at that conference in 2018 when I met him. It's like, okay, that's the book. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Jan, another question. And you've kind of been talking about this, but so question, I go to therapy and feel better during the session, but my patterns always come back. Why?
Yeah. So what kind of therapy? Is it, CBT? If it is, you may have a kind of felt shift in the body
Right.
during therapy when you're co-regulating with the therapist and you feel safe and all that. But bodies need repetition, practice. They need a lot of, rewiring that trauma bond and that traumatic feedback loop, right? So you have to then take that, bring it into some somatic practices and do them every day. And and for people in addiction, you have to really, and depression, push yourself. You have to override through thinking when you want to stay in bed all day and hide from people. To tell yourself, well, that's what we feel like in dorsal, but that's not going to help me. So, remember in my therapy session, I love my therapist and I felt better after. Why is that? Well, from a polyvagal lens, it's because you co-regulated, you were socially engaged and you felt safe and trusting. And all those goodies from social engagement help you feel better. It's like, okay, life's not actually so bad, and I had that great conversation and we feel better after our therapy session, but we have to then take that into the body and work with it every day, because it takes a lot to build those new neural pathways. We've got to produce lots of new cells in order to do that, to rewire the brain and the body.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the good news,
Hmm.
that we can teach people, okay, so this is why you feel better, and this is what you need to do. And
Right.
it's in your hands.
Hmm.
And we can work with people to help them. Well, what are the other things that you can do to really, you know, activate a ventral state? And one of those things is simply getting together with other people and creating community and safety. That is the biggest thing. And that's the thing in a top-down Western world we don't have.
Right.
Unless we find communities in maybe spiritual communities that are embodied or, whatever. But generally speaking, we don't do a good job of that. It's a very individualistic, I look at my street and I think this is crazy. Everybody's living, in their own little mom and dad and the kids, going crazy trying to meet everybody's needs every day, plus financially. Why don't people live together? I mean, you can still have privacy and boundaries, but yeah.
This is so cool. Another question, which is along the lines of what we're talking about here, is okay, so I've changed my diet years ago, but still have chronic gut issues. What is going on? How can I help that?
So that's probably trauma, right? Unless somebody just hasn't found something. And even if they have, bodies are all connected. So, I love this about Gabor Mate's work, where he really talks about this connection between illness and the body, right? And how it makes sense from a polyvagal lens too, because if you're living in the trauma feedback loop, in that sympathetic state, the autonomic nervous system is struggling and your immune system is compromised. So when we get stressed like that, our bodies give off these signals of, something's not right, and we get sick, right? I always get a cold when I feel really stressed. This winter I had two, and I'm like, what is going on? I need to slow down and get more ventral energy going in here. But it's very helpful to realize that. So what I would be doing is going and looking for, well, and also, I mean, there are some new areas now. BG Mancini is working with, do you know BG? So she's working with, in a holistic way with the gut and how the gut is impacted by the nervous system. This is a huge area that we really need to delve into more, and not to shame people with this kind of like, oh, they're making it up, or they're just a hypochondriac, or these are all the pathologizing language of a top-down system that doesn't understand how bodies work. So it's finding out more about the whole person.
Yeah,
That's,
beautiful.
How's
yeah,
your life? How
yeah,
safe do you feel in your life? What's going on? What are your relationships like?
absolutely.
Instead of like now you go to the doctor and you have 15 minutes to present one problem.
Hmm. That's
So
true.
you know what I do? I go to the nurse practitioner because, the nurse practitioner doesn't have a time slot. They're salaried and
Right.
they can see the whole person. Oh,
Yeah,
this is going on here. Well, what's going on there? Well, what's
right.
going on down there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we coined the term wholality. We look at the whole
Hmm.
person, that we're
Yeah.
not just dissociated parts of bodies, kind of unentangled from our spirituality or psychology or body. It's all one whole system with many features. And someone,
One
Yes.
divine system with many features.
Yes.
Yeah,
And bodies work in feedback loops.
yes,
absolutely.
It's a system.
We have the infinity.
Yes,
in
yes.
our logo.
Mhm.
Starting and stopping and ladders are linear.
Right.
In my work, I use circles. They're
Mhm.
systems. Their bodies are all connected in feedback loops. And that's not what top-down systems work with. Steve talks about this too, because they're linear. It's like there's a start and then there's a stop. Um, And that's not how state nervous system states are either. Most of the time, I believe we live in blended states. It's like right now, this blended state I think we're in of there's nice ventral, we feel safe, but we're also on air, so there's a little bit of a kind of fired up sympathetic energy there, and we're having fun too. So there's that as well, right? And so, this is where I live a lot of the time now because I'm doing all these on-air things, which are exhausting. So the rest of the time I'm like in dorsal in my pajamas watching British detective novel series.
Stiff upper lip. Come on. Yes.
Oh,
Well, Jen, we're almost out of time. Two questions before we finish. Number
Sure.
one, well, one of them is how do people get hold of you and what are your books? But before we go there, the most important question, why do you do what you do?
Nobody's asked me that way before. Um, it goes way back, right, to being a little kid and always being curious about relationships and how people, what they think about things. And I think I had a kind of gift for being insightful, and it got me into trouble because I didn't know how to make boundaries around it and now blurt things out that made people really offended. So I learned how to use that gift, that quality of being insightful and nosy and becoming a really good therapist too. And I don't know why I was always in my body, but I was always in my body. I didn't learn how to focus. I was one of those people that was connected to the natural process of focusing in the body. And then I had my own trauma history. My mom, my poor mom suffered a lot and she killed herself. Um, and my dad left the family, and lots of things that went on there. And so, we go in there and we try to figure things out, right? How did this happen? What was going on? We all have our journey. And so I was trying to, in my own way, and I got into therapy really early, like I was 17 or something, because I was curious too, right? Like, what is that process? How does it all work? Yeah. So there you go.
Well, you're a gift. That was one of the very first things I think I attended a little webinar on the polyvagal when you got your new app, the app. And
Yeah.
so you were just very welcoming, you offer this energy that is that creates a sense of safety.
Mm.
And I just wanted to thank you for that. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for sharing. And I'm so excited about your new book, but your other new book that's in the works.
So on that theme, Jen, could you tell, so for people watching this, like, well, how do they get hold of you? What's your website and what are your books called? So give us the lowdown.
They can reach me at janwinhall.com. And there pretty well lists all the things that I'm involved in. The Embodied Dialogue series, we should mention my series because you're going to be my guest. I sent you a guest presenter form. Did you get it? But it's in your email.
Okay.
I think we said July or August, but people will put out so I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram and all that. And people can find me through the Polyvagal Institute. I have a 3-year training program for therapists
Mm.
working with trauma and addiction. And yeah, the Embodied Dialogue series is free once a month. I try to give away things as much as possible. I'm doing a Somatic Mondays for the Friendly Circle Berlin group
Oh,
that
yeah.
I love, Patrick McTeer. But you can find all of that on my website and my 2 books. So the first one is there, Treating Trauma and Addiction with the Felt Sense Polyvagal Model. And it's more of a kind of an outlining of the whole model. And then the one that just came out in March is 20 Embodied Practices. So this is like a manual
Mhm.
that helps people to implement the model through 20 embodied practices. And we're working on offering those in community practice groups, breaking them down so people can become more familiar with what it looks like to work in this embodied way with trauma and with self-harm.
Hmm.
Self-harm is a big thing, and therapists are often, they avoid it. They don't want to work with it. They're afraid of it, and no wonder because well, it's scary, right?
Yeah.
And addiction. But trauma and addiction need to be treated together because they belong together. So
Right.
we're really working at the forefront of that
Yeah.
to try to get that message across to people. Um, Lula Ben's work, you should check that she's also really working in that area as well. And she's just a lovely person. So
Lula
yeah,
Benz.
I'm
Okay.
up to lots of different things, but you'll find
Oh,
them at janwinall.com.
that's exciting.
Beautiful.
I
Anything else
know.
on
I
that?
think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Bless you. We very, very much appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I'm sure this is
Yeah,
a lot
that
of
was great. That was fun. I really enjoyed it. Okay, bye.
Bye.